Okay, so welcome to my series on managerial economics, and in this video, I'm going to continue with the Cournot analysis of, or I'm going to continue with the Cournot analysis, especially the quantitative Cournot analysis. And please, if you have not subscribed to this channel, please do so, subscribe, comment, share, so that we can continue to bring to you more of this content. Now, a requirement for this particular video is that if you have not watched the first video on Cournot, please do so, because this video is an addition to that video. And in this video, I'm going to solve further examples on the Cournot analysis. Now, in this particular slide, the second example we are solving, the question says that a firm can produce at a constant average and marginal cost of AC is equal to MC is equal to 5. It faces a market demand curve given by Q is equal to 53 minus P. Now remember that when it comes to Cournot analysis, the main control variable of the firm is the quantity, or the main independent variable of the firm is the quantity. So here, what we'll do is that this particular demand function, it has to be turned into an inverse demand function where the quantity will now become the independent or the control variable. Then the question says, assume that there is another firm in the market and thus the total industry output is given by Q1 and Q2. Suppose the second firm has the same cost. So the key thing here you must recognize is that the second firm has the same cost as the first, and that each firm chooses its profit maximizing output on the assumption that its competitor's output is first. Now, this statement here alone also shows that we are talking about Cournot. All right, so sometimes the question may not really say using Cournot analysis, but statement like this gives us a clue, because the statement says that each firm chooses its profit maximizing level of output on the assumption that its competitor's output is fixed. Now, A says, what are the reaction functions for the two firms? B says, what are the equilibrium output? C says, what is the equilibrium price? And D says, what is the profit for each firm, and then the total industry profit. So here we are going to use our formulas to get the answers. Now remember that the demand function was 53 minus P. So if we turn this around to make it an inverse demand function by making price the subject, we have P is equal to 53 minus Q. But the question says that this industry quantity is Q1 plus Q2. So we have P is equal to 53 minus Q1 plus Q2. Then the question says that the firm has a constant average cost, which is the same as the firm's marginal cost, and is equal to 5. Now I want us to do some analysis here. Now remember that total cost is equal to fixed cost plus variable cost, okay? Fixed cost plus variable cost. And average cost is equal to average fixed cost plus average variable cost. Average fixed cost plus average variable cost, okay? Now, in essence, total cost, if you want to open up the total variable cost, you have fixed cost plus the variable cost per unit times the quantity, all right? So then average cost will now be equal to average fixed cost plus, of course, which is gotten by fixed cost over quantity, plus average variable cost, which is gotten by total variable cost over quantity. So when this and this cancels, we have average cost is equal to average fixed cost plus average variable cost, which is C1. Now the question says that the average cost of the firm is equal to the marginal cost. Remember, whenever we have a linear function, this average variable cost is the same as the marginal cost. I said that in the video preceding this video. All right. So what this then means is that from the question, there is no element of fixed cost. So when there is no element of fixed cost, or when the fixed cost is 0, that is when we will have AC is equal to 0. Because when the fixed cost is 0, average fixed cost also will be 0, right? Plus C1. So it is only when we don't have fixed cost, that is when we will have the average cost to be equal to the marginal cost or the average variable cost. So keep in your mind that in this question, there is no fixed cost. There is no fixed cost. Now the question says that the marginal cost of the two firms are the same, all right? So it means that the marginal cost or the average variable cost, because on assumption that the cost function is linear, I said that in the earlier video that the marginal cost is the same as the average variable cost and is the same as C1. So the question says the marginal cost is equal to 5 for both firms. So C1 is equal to 5, C2 is also equal to 5, okay? Now remember, from this, when we juxtapose this with this formula, A minus B into brackets Q1 plus Q2, what it means is that our A is 53, and then our B is an imaginary 1, which is somewhere here, an imaginary 1, which is here. So put in mind that A is 53, B is 1, okay? And then C1 is 5, C2 is also 5. Now, to determine the reaction functions, we have the reaction function for firm 1 will be equal to Q1 is equal to A minus C1 over 2B minus 0 to minus 0.5 Q2, all right? So we have Q1, our A was 53, our C1 was 5 over 2 into bracket, our B was 1 minus 0.5 Q2. So you have Q1 is equal to, if you simplify this, you get 24 minus 0.5 Q2. Then the reaction function for firm 2 also will be equal to Q2 is equal to Q2 is equal to A minus C2 over 2B minus 0.5 Q1. So when you fix the figures, you have Q2 is equal to 53 minus 5 all over 2 into bracket 1 minus 0.5 Q1. So when you simplify, Q2 is also equal to 24 minus 0.5 Q1. So these are the reaction function for the two firms. Now, the next step in Cournot analysis is to solve the reaction functions simultaneously. We are going to solve the reaction functions simultaneously. So here we have Q1 is equal to 24 minus 0.5 Q2, okay? Then we also have Q2 to be equal to 24 minus 0.5 Q1. So we can name this equation 1, and we can name this equation 2. Now, I mentioned to you that to make Cournot sense, we have to solve these equations using substitution method. So we can just say put equation 2 in 1. So once we did that, we have Q1 to be equal to 24 minus 0.5 into brackets 24 minus 0.5 Q1. So once we expand, we have Q1 to be equal to 24 minus, so minus 0.5 times 24, we have minus 12, minus 0.5 times minus 0.5 Q1, we have minus 0.25, sorry, positive 0.25 Q1, okay, positive 0.25 Q1. So the next thing is that we are going to group like terms. So you have Q1 minus 0.25 Q1 is equal to 24 minus 12 is also 12. So you have 0.75 Q1 is equal to 12. So when you divide both sides by 0.75, we have Q1 to be equal to 16. Okay. Now, once we have Q1 to be equal to 16, we can put it in the reaction function of Q2 to get the answer. So we have Q2 is equal to 24 minus 0.5 into bracket 16. So that will give us 24 minus 0.5 times 16. So we have 24 minus 8, and we have Q2 also to be equal to 16. Q2 is also 16. All right. Q2 is also 16. Now, before we move on, we could even represent these calculations on a graph. Now we have the reaction function Q1 to be equal to 24 minus 0.5 Q2. Then we will have Q2 to also be equal to 24 minus 0.5 Q1. Now, if you want to draw this on a graph of Q2 and Q1, okay, that means that we have to find the coordinates. So using the first reaction function, when Q2 is equal to 0, you have Q1 to be equal to 24. And then when Q1 is equal to 0, we will have 0 is equal to 24 minus 0.5 Q2. All right, so we have 0.5 Q2 is equal to 24. Okay, so if you divide both sides by 0.5, we have Q2 to be equal to 48. So what is happening here is that the coordinate point of Q1, Q2, one of them is 24, 0, and the other one is 0, 48. Okay, so we have 24, 0. So let's say here is 24. So we have 24, 0, as in Q1, Q2, we have 24, 0. Then we have, let's say, if here is 48. So if here is 48, then we will have 0, 48. So here, then we will draw our curve like this to cut through this. All right. So we are going to do the same thing for reaction function 2. We are going to do the same thing for the second reaction function. We are going to do the same thing for the second reaction function. So now one Q2 is equal to 24 minus 0.5 Q1. So here, when Q1 is equal to 0, Q2 is equal to 24. So we will have 0, 24. All right. And then when Q2 is equal to 0, when you work it out, you have Q1 to be equal to 48. So now we have 48, 0. All right. So for the second reaction function, we will have 48, 0, and then 0, 24. So you have 0, 24 here. So you now cross this one. Now at the equilibrium point where they meet, if you trace it to the y and x axis, you get 16, 16. All right. So this is how we represent it on a graph. Okay. Now let's go and find the profit for the two firms. Let's go and find the profit for the two firms. Now remember that profit for firm 1 is equal to quantity 1 into bracket the industry price minus the average variable cost of firm 1, which is the same as the marginal cost. The average variable cost of firm 1 minus the fixed cost of firm 1. Okay. Now we have to first of all calculate the industry profit before we can do all this analysis. So sorry, the industry price before we can do all this analysis. So we have P is equal to 53 minus Q1 plus Q2. All right. So we have P is equal to 53 minus 16 plus 16. So we will have 53 minus 16 plus 16. I believe that will be 32. So once you summarize, we will have the price to be equal to 21. Okay. Now remember from our earlier analysis, I told you that in this question there is no fixed cost. Okay. So it means that the profit for firm 1 will be equal to the quantity of firm 1, which is 16 into bracket the price 21 minus the average variable cost and the marginal cost, which is 5. Since there is no fixed cost, minus 0. Okay, so minus 0. So we will now have 16. 21 minus 5 is also 16. So 16 times 16 will give us our final answer. And that final answer will be 256. So we also do the same for firm 2. So profit 2 is equal to Q2 into bracket P minus C2 minus fixed cost 2. All right. And this will give us 16 into bracket 21 minus 5 minus 0 because there is no fixed cost 2. So when you do it, you also get 256 for firm 2. That means that the total industry profit will be equal to the profit for firm 1 plus the profit for firm 2. And this is going to give us 256 plus 256. And then we will have 512 cedis as the total industry profit. So we will take our final example on the Cournot analysis, and then we'll be done with the Cournot model. The final example. This example says that suppose the market demand for 2 firms is giving us Q1 plus Q2 is equal to 53 minus P. The cost incurred by the first firm by producing the last unit of output. So this technically means that we are talking about marginal cost, okay, which is the same as the average variable cost once we have a linear cost function. So the cost incurred by the first firm by producing the last unit is 10 cedis, whilst that of the second firm, which is the marginal cost or the average variable cost of the second firm, is 12 cedis. So what are the reaction functions for the firms? The equilibrium output, the equilibrium price, and then the profit if the fixed cost of firm 1 is 50 and that of the second firm is 80. All right, so from this analysis, we can clearly see that our C1 is equal to 10 and our C2 is equal to 12. All right, so remember, we would have to change this demand function into an inverse demand function. We have to change this demand function into an inverse demand function. Okay, so now let's go back to our drawing board. So once we change, we have price is equal to 53 minus into bracket Q1 plus Q2. All right, so from this price or the inverse demand function, we have A is equal to 53, we have B is equal to 1 because there's an imaginary 1 here. Also remember that C2 is equal to 12 and then C1 is equal to 10. All right, so the reaction function for firm 1, Q1 is equal to A minus C1 over 2B minus 0.5 Q2. So we have Q1 to be equal to 53 minus 10 over 2 into bracket 1 minus 0.5 Q2. All right, so once we summarize, you have Q1 is equal to 43 over 2 minus 0.5 Q2. So you have Q1 to be equal to 21.5 minus 0.5 Q2. And this is the reaction function for firm 1. Okay. The reaction function for firm 2, the formula is Q2 is equal to A minus C2 over 2 into brackets or 2B minus 0.5 Q1. All right. So we have Q2 to be equal to the A is 53, the C2 is 12 over 2 into bracket 1 minus 0.5 Q2. All right. So once we summarize this, we are going to get Q2 is equal to 20.5 minus 0.5 Q1. So sorry, here is Q1. Okay. So this is the reaction function for the second firm. So the two reaction functions are Q1 is equal to 21.5 minus 0.5 Q2, and then Q2 is equal to 20.5 minus 0.5 Q1. Okay, so we are going to solve these functions simultaneously. So we can just say put equation 2 in 1. You can put any in any, all right? So we will have Q1 is equal to 21.5 minus 0.5 into brackets 20.5 minus 0.5 Q1. So we will have Q1 to be equal to 21.5. So minus 0.5 times 20.5, that will give us minus 10.25. The minus 0.5 times minus 0.5 Q1, we will have plus 0.25 Q1, okay? So once you group like terms, you have Q1 minus 0.25 Q1 is equal to, if you subtract 21, if you subtract 10.25 from 21.5, we will have 11.25. Okay, so we will now have 0.75 Q1 is equal to 11.25. When you divide both sides by Q1, you have by 0.75, we will have Q1 to be equal to 11.25 divided by 0.75. So that is going to give us Q1 is equal to 15. Okay. Now, having gotten Q1, we can just put it in Q2. All right, to get Q2. So we have Q2 is equal to 20.5 minus 0.5 Q1, which is 15. So you have 20.5. If you multiply 0.5 by 15, that will be 7.5. So 20.5 minus 7.5. So Q2 is equal to 13 units. Now let's move on and find our profit. Profit for firm 1 will be given as Q1 into bracket P minus C1 minus fixed cost 1. Okay. So this is going to give us 15 into bracket. So yeah, so we have 15 into bracket the price. So let's find the industry price first. So P is equal to 53 minus Q1 plus Q2. So we will now have 53 minus 15 plus 13. So then we will have the industry price. So we will have 53 minus the 15 plus 13. That will be 28. So once we subtract 28 from 53, we are going to get 25. Okay. So now let's come back to profit for firm 1. So profit for firm 1 is going to give us 15 into bracket the price 25 minus marginal cost 1, which was 10. Okay, minus fixed cost 1. So let's go and look at the question. The question gave us fixed cost. So it says, what is the profit for each firm and the total industry profit if the fixed cost of firm 1 is 50 and that of firm 2 is 80? All right, the fixed cost for firm 1 is 50 and the fixed cost for firm 2 is 80. Okay, so once we do that, the fixed cost for firm 1 is 50. So we will now have 15 into bracket 25 minus 10 is also 15 minus 50. So we now have 15 times 15, which is 225 minus 50, and that is going to give us 175. Okay. So the profit for firm 1 is 175. The profit for firm 2 here, the profit for firm 2 would be calculated as K2 into bracket the price minus marginal cost or average variable cost 2 minus fixed cost 2. So this is going to give us 13 into bracket the price 25 minus marginal cost 2, which was 12, minus fixed cost, which is 80. All right, according to the question. So you have 13 into bracket 25 minus 12 is going to give us 13 as well, minus 80. So we have 13 times 13, which is 169 minus 80. That is going to give us 89. Okay. And then the total industry profit will be 175 plus 89. And this is going to give us 264 cedis. All right. Okay, so this will bring us to the end of the discussion on Cournot. All right. So please like, comment, share, and most importantly, subscribe to this channel so that we can bring you more content. All right. So you'll meet in the next video on Stackelberg analysis. Thank you.